Hello, so today's gonna be a STORYWEAVER game. So in general, STORYWEAVER is pretty strong this patch. I think that just the way matchups kind of work out, especially against like melee units or things where you have like a really clumped front line, get a lot of value off of the Kayle. So playing vertical STORYWEAVER is now like, it generally is pretty good. And it's only growing in stats as the patch kind of goes on. I tend to lean it as often as I can. So this is from the last time I was playing. I kind of enjoyed playing around Kayle in a couple games just because of how strong it kind of feels. And honestly how easy it is, right? One of the big things with STORYWEAVER or playing vertical STORYWEAVER is that you're basically getting a summoned unit, which is this Kayle, and the Kayle is going to be your main carry for most of the game, right? Because your Kayle is your main carry, your items you don't have to worry that much about, especially if you like just pick green Kayle. Right, so the way Kayle works is you pick like, you know, either red, blue, blue, or green, blue, blue, typically with the Kayle. And then, yeah, she just does most of the work for you. And because she's doing all the work and she kind of has built-in items, like you can't put items on Kayle. It's kind of like she has her built-in, I don't know what they're called, tomes, I believe. She has her built-in tomes that she can use. So if you're doing that, then you don't really have to worry about like, you know, having shred, having all this other stuff, right? You can kind of just let it rock and just prioritize making items for like the rest of your team. So a lot of times you prio tank items, you prio just generic attack items on whatever backline unit you might have, and it's pretty simple, right? So here, oh, it's a talisman. I guess it's talisman, then it's tome. The first one, talisman. So I think the big decision here is always between red and green. I like red Kayle the most because I like red Kayle for two reasons, right? So starting Kayle, if you're playing like towards STORYWEAVER, here I still don't know if I'm playing towards STORYWEAVER. Green Kayle is really good because green Kayle gives armor reduction and MR reduction. So it attaches it to the Kayle, excuse me. It makes it so you don't have to make a you don't have to make anything that's related to armor reduction or magic reduction. Here it's a little bit troll. I kind of just lean towards STORYWEAVER crown. I shouldn't even roll these because like now I don't see Jeweled Lotus anymore, right? Seeing Jeweled Lotus here, I won't see it later in the game. So I went into the situation of, well, like, you know, if there's another prismatic augment later, I'm kind of just like rolling away prismatic combats that would have been really nice with this comp. But I just take the STORYWEAVER +1. STORYWEAVER +1 works really well. I already have a Riven, and this gives me a Zyra. Or sorry, this gives me a Zyra and a Riven, if I'm not mistaken. And I already have the Garen and the Sivir. So here I'm just like kind of like taking generic items. I'll probably make items towards, what's it called? I'm making first the Shred. That's why I'm taking like Cloak and Rod. Sorry that I don't have the extra stuff, like the penmanship today and the other stuff. Just extremely hot. And I'm gonna pass out, so I just need to do this really quickly. I waited till it's like at least the sun went down, so it's a little bit more bearable in my room for my computer to process these videos. So you know, that's how it's gonna be a little bit this week. Hopefully I can get the guide out tomorrow. I'm gonna try and record it late at night tonight, maybe with a window open. But yeah, it's like a huge heat wave for me, so you know, low energy video today, but also a very low energy guide, so I think it works out really nicely. We don't have to like stare at stats a bunch. You can kind of just see like a very simple, very beginner friendly comp as well, right? If you're starting out or if you're confused on what to play in some games, something like this really works out nicely, right? So the main thing is like, I think it's easier to play green Kayle early, right? If you play green Kayle, the only thing you have to prioritize making is anti-heal, right? Typically when you're making your items, you're trying to make shred, right? So shred basically reduces magic resistance, and the Kayle is doing mostly magic damage. So that's why I prioritize making a spark first, as well as general tank items, right? Because the Kayle is going to do all the work. All you really need is some kind of shred to help out the Kayle, as well as generic tank items help out a lot. And then towards the end of the game, you can maybe itemize towards an Irelia, because if you're playing vertical STORYWEAVER, you'll probably have Irelia, and Irelia just does a shit ton of damage. That will help out your board a lot. So in this case, I just prioed making a bunch of tank items. I have a bow. Bow can turn into anti-heal really easily. If you get 2 bows, you make red buff. And I have the STORYWEAVER emblem on bench, which I can easily, as soon as I get to level 5, I can play 5 STORYWEAVER, and I'll be very strong for a lot of the early game. That's also why STORYWEAVER is really nice, right? Even if you're not win streaking, you have the extra unit with this Kayle, so you're going to be very strong early game, into your mid game, into your late game, right? Obviously, when you're in the really late game, it might fall off a little bit, and it's a little bit difficult. Your biggest decision, though, is if you don't have a shred component, it's a little bit riskier to play red Kayle, right? Because let's say I didn't have Spark here, my Kayle wouldn't be doing as much damage, and that would just generally hurt my my relative board strength, right? Here I'm putting in Soraka, right? The unit I just put in. I don't really care too much about Trick Shot. I don't really care about the Sivir damage as much as I do just having more frontline. So I put in the Soraka because she gives armor and MR to my frontline in the form of Altruist, right? And my board's basically set for right now, right? I'm going to level, I'm going to play the Zyra, and that's about it, right? I'm going to level, I'm going to play Zyra, I'm going to be 5 Storyweaver, and I'm going to pick blue Kayle after this, right? Green Kayle, like, basically the thought I keep trying to say is that this red Kayle, I feel like it's really good late game, in that, like, when it's really late in the game, it helps the Kayle cast a couple more times. There's a lot of times where I pick green Kayle early, and I'm strong, and then right at the end of the game, I get severely outcapped. I feel like my Kayle just isn't pumping out as much damage as she could be. With red Kayle, you have the benefit that later the extra attack speed helps her to cast faster. In addition to that, the other thing that red Kayle gives you is the opportunity to pivot to Kai'Sa, right? Let's say you're not gonna play vertical Storyweaver. Red Kayle is really good with Kai'Sa, right? I find that with green Kayle, you run into a situation where it's a little bit awkward. As you can see, there's also chat comments. I do play live sometimes. I probably won't play live this week that it's really hot. I'll try to do it tomorrow if things work out a little bit better. Today was just miserable. Like, I have a headache and I've been like super nauseous all day because AC broke and stuff like that. So hopefully it's fixed. Anyways, I take glove here, or the TG, right? Thieves gloves is really good in a comp like this because, like I said, your Kayle kind of is doing most of the damage already, so you don't have to prioritize making like carry items until a lot later, right? I already have the shred. I do need anti-heal, so I want to hold on to the bow. Putting a random TG, even though a Thieves gloves isn't necessarily the best item to have, like it's an item that spikes, right? It gives you like a lot of value, especially early game. So if I could, I'd just make a bunch of TGs this game and we'll see what happens, right? Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. This is gonna be a kind of funny game. I could also, maybe I can pull out the pen app, actually. Now my computer's kind of calming down a little bit. Maybe I can squeeze in a little penmanship. Yeah, I don't want to make this one too boring. This one's for the fans, right? I think that, like, you know, it's not necessarily going to be the most insane game in terms of, like, energy levels, but this is definitely one that helps you with a lot of the easier games. So here, instantly I just see a Thieves goes to Morello. This is an insta take because remember what I was saying? I have shred and I have this Kayle doing damage. The only thing I really need to make is anti-heal now. So now all my items are kind of dealt with. I can just focus on generic items, tank items, damage items, like whatever it may be. I have most of everything kind of sorted out already, right? So I took Morello, I'll put it on the Zoe, and it's fine, right? I think in terms of shred, it's a little bit better to maybe not to make Spark. I think Shiv is a little bit better just because like your Zoe's generally going to be a little bit safer than your frontline unit that just might die, right? So I'd much rather play towards like Morello Shiv on a Zoe and then go rocket like that. You don't also, when you're playing towards this line, you don't have to reroll Zoe, right? Especially if you're playing vertical Storyweaver. I think some people get caught up in that. You can just level. Like having an Irelia is a lot more important than having like a Zoe 3, in my opinion, right? So a lot of times you just really want to be like that high level cap and just like put in a lot of legendary units. Sometimes it's even right to drop, like this will eventually be a 7 Storyweaver game, but sometimes it's correct based on what items you have and what units you hit to drop out of 7 Storyweaver and just play 5 Storyweaver and play more legendary units, right? Like if I have this Storyweaver +1, for example, I can fit in like Rakan, Wukong, Irelia, Lee Sin, and like that's probably a lot stronger of a board, right? You basically just drop Zoe and Garen, or Sivir and Garen, or usually it's just Zoe Garen on your final board. You drop those and instead you get Sage, Altruist, Dragon Lord, 2 legendary units upgraded, right? It compensates, right? The damage that the Kayle loses, you just have like a giga board that you kind of work with. It's component Anvil Galaxy, if I'm not mistaken. I keep getting Anvil drops. Is that what it is? I actually missed the Galaxy, so maybe I'm wrong. But I'm just gonna pop as many TGs as possible here, right? It's also probably a good idea for me to level this turn. Oh, actually, I'm only one. I'm on a loss streak. Never mind. I thought I was on a win streak. If I'm on a loss streak, then if I was on a win streak, I was preserving like a win streak, then it's a really good level here. Because the Silas does spike me quite a bit, because Silas is a pretty strong unit, as well as just being like generically like, you know, generically pretty good. Anyways, I'm putting my Zyra here, right? I don't want you to get alarmed, right? The reason the Zyra is in the front is because if you look at the way that Kayle attacks, she attacks in like this wide wave. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure that the enemy front line is arranged in a straight line such that the Kayle gets full value on hitting everybody, right? So Kayle doesn't like do less damage on the fringes or stuff like that. She just hits in this really wide area. So it makes a lot of sense to just like make sure that the opponent's front line is in a similar position, right? Here's a really fun one. I'm going to take Golden Remover here. It's not Recon Bob just because like the way my board is set up. I know I can get 1-5 cost, right, with the Silas, but it's not worth it. Anyways, I high roll a Galio. So this game is just already pretty fun. But basically, Golden Remover, if you don't know, when you have a Thieves Gloves, whatever items the Thieves Gloves have, I'll demonstrate it probably this turn or maybe next turn. Whatever item the Thieves Gloves have is gonna remain the same for that particular Thieves Gloves, right? It's not tied to the unit, it's tied to the item, right? When it's Lucky Gloves, it's tied to the unit, right? If you have Lucky Gloves, which is the one that gives you tailored items for the particular unit, then it tailors it to the unit. But for example, this Thieves Gloves that has a Runans, if I Golden Remover it and it goes back on my bench, the Thieves Gloves on my bench will still be a Runans belt Thieves Gloves, right? No matter which unit I put it on, it will always be a Runans and a belt. The same is true for the Silas. The Thieves Gloves that I have on the Silas, it will always be a Sterex and a sword. So having the Golden Remover, basically what you can do is you make a bunch of Thieves Gloves, right? Especially because this is a component galaxy. You make a bunch of Thieves Gloves, you use the Golden Remover, and you rearrange the Thieves Gloves based on the unit that fits those items best. Because the whole point of the Thieves Gloves is that it's random, but it gives you like 2 items or it gives you more components. Here they're both the same, but here it's like Hodge Runans on the Riven. So I could swap these and put on Silas, but it's not that big of a deal. Relative to the rest of the field, I'm pretty much the only one that's playing towards Kayle. I'm trying to arrange the Kayle, right? You never really want to corner your Kayle, right? If you corner the Kayle and she shoots towards the middle, as you can see, if she shoots in a wide area and the opponents are arranged like this wide area won't get as much value as if she shoots forward and hits them straight on, right? So I'm always trying to position my Kayle such that she's hitting multiple units because it just gives more value every time she casts, right? Now, sometimes, like, you know, obviously in this fight, things kind of die, right? But as you'll see, when she casts, she pretty much hit everybody, right? And that's what we're always trying to do, just because it's so much damage that the Kayle pumps out. But you lose so much of that damage if you don't play towards, like if you're going for, like, single target damage, then you should just be playing, like, red Kayle, which is far inferior, as most people kind of consider, right? I'm waiting for these Thieves Gloves to roll like awkward items so that I can show the trick of like using the remover, because I was doing this live and I was definitely explaining this tech to the people that were watching my stream at the point. So it was really fun. Also, make sure you like and subscribe to the video if you like my content. Obviously today is gonna be a little bit more mellow, just because like I said, there's some IRL things that are making life miserable. But besides that, you know, hopefully it's enjoyable. Yeah, so I'm just making as many Thieves Gloves as possible, right? Now we look at these, right? They're all still good. Here, I'll demonstrate, actually, probably. So watch, I'll remove this Riven Thieves Gloves, and then I'll remove the Silas Thieves Gloves. So this was the one that was on the Riven, and if you remember the item on the Riven, I forget what it was, but the item on the Silas was here, right? So as you can see, it moves here. As you can see, it still has QSS Glove, right? It doesn't matter which unit you put it on, it's always QSS Glove. So what you can do is with Golden Remover, if you make a bunch of Thieves Gloves, which already I said, because of this comp in particular, Kayle is doing all the damage. I have Anti-Heal and I have Shred, right? So my Kayle carry items are complete. I'm basically just going to make as many Thieves Gloves as possible. I'm going to Thieves Gloves all the units on my board, just get as many items as possible, make my board really strong that way. And because I have Golden Remover, I can rearrange them such that, like, for example, my Zyra randomly starts rolling back frontline items, but she's in the back line. It doesn't turn into this awkward situation of, oh shit, my Zyra has useless items. I can always find a way to use whatever the Thieves Gloves roll, right? and I just rearrange them. So now it just becomes like an APM game, kind of, like, in a way. Not entirely, like, it's not like I'm not trying to say like I have good APM at all, but like now it's like a level of, okay, let me see, like, let me try and like rearrange these to be like the best that it can be. Obviously right now we have a mix of frontline and backline items here, so you know, it's generally okay the way that I have them arranged. Even though items aren't the best on Zyra, I don't really have somebody else to put them on. I'm trying to bait out my opponent. I forget which one I was fighting. I think it was like I was fighting against a Lux player. Yeah, but then the Lux player moved. I think originally the Lux was on this side, so I was trying to bait out the Lux to like stall this way. But now the Lux is still going to aim for the Zoe, which is actually way worse, so I should have just left my Zyra here. But you know, I think we both just positioned for each other, and this guy positioned better. But it should be fine, right? Because as you can see here, as soon as my Kayle cast, they're all going to die. Yeah. Just so much damage. I don't even think my Kayle killed the unit. I think the Zoe got to her first. It's against neutrals here, so this is fine. But yeah, as you can see, this is what I mean by it's a very easy comp to play. Obviously, I have this high roll like Thieves Gloves plus Golden Remover, but even if you didn't have this option, it's a pretty simple comp to play, just because you're just clicking Storyweaver units, right? You're clicking Storyweaver units, and then whatever you don't have as Storyweaver, like the Storyweaver +1 helps a lot because it makes you a lot more stable. As you can see, I was 5 Storyweaver really easily, and I'm going to be 7 Storyweaver really easily, because in order to hit 5 and 7, in order to hit 5 Storyweaver, you have to hit all the units plus a Zoe, which a Zoe is really hard to hit on stage 2 because she's a 3-cost unit, right? So it makes hitting 5 Storyweaver difficult. And then 7 Storyweaver is really difficult because you need an Irelia. So it's so that's why the Storyweaver +1 really enables the comp, right? It's really easy to play. Like if you see a Storyweaver +1, it's like, okay, I can just play vertical Storyweaver, right? You're not re-rolling for a 3-star of any of these units, right? Unless you really have to, because what you could do is just save money, try and go level 9. You really just have to find a Galio. So you're trying to get to level 8, roll for a Galio, and then with the Storyweaver +1, you don't need the Irelia, so you should be able to find all the other units by then, and then you just go straight to level 10, right? Well, not straight to level 10, but straight to level 9, then you just cap out your board, and you get, like, it's not a comp that's going to get you first all the time, but it's a pretty easy top 4 comp. Right here, like, this guy sent it, like, he's level 8, he sent it already, and it was very close, right? I didn't even roll any gold yet, and it's still keeping up, right? Because just the relative power of like this Kayle. The Kayle really falls off stage 5, 6. You'll see towards the end of the game, I'm gonna struggle a lot with this Kayle, right? She won't be as crazy as everything else in the game, but it's very nice, right? Here I'm just checking the stats. I don't feel like bringing it up today because like this game's kind of more of like a chill, like simple game. I think the best thing to take is Epitaph, if I'm not mistaken. I just looked at the stats for it specifically. Like if you're playing 7 Storyweaver, the shield from Epitaph is really nice. The biggest thing you always want is frontline, and as you can see here, now I'm level 3 Kayle. Right, if I leveled last turn, I would have even won that fight, which would have been really nice. It's just that I didn't want to over greed it because I really want to be able to go level 9. But as you can see here, I'm just rearranging the items. I put the I didn't slam the right item. As you can see, this one had a frontline item, and this one was mostly for backline, so I swapped them. I think technically my Zoe items aren't that great, so I can put these items on the Zoe instead of the Zyra one. I think I'm just like leaning towards like, you know, I want to build like 3 full items for Zoe at one point, but that's like an optimization I could have. This guy's very strong. He hit like a lot of upgrades as well as like a really strong board, but I'm kind of greeding to go level 9, right? I'm like 74 HP, right? Now I'm rolling a little bit because I'm starting to realize like, okay, I lost 2 fights in a row. You know, maybe those guys were high rollers, but like I'm seeing like, look, this guy's a set 2. You know, I need at least some kind of upgrade. So anyways, I find this Galio, so I'm down for Galio upgrade. Now that I have Galio 2, Galio's a better holder of like the main frontline items. I also, where did I find this Irelia? Did I find this Irelia now? Wait, holy shit, did I find that this turn? I didn't have it last turn, right? I didn't even notice. I was looking for the Galio. This Irelia is such a high roll because I even have Irelia items, right? Like I made this Gwynsu and this, like Gwynsu isn't the best Irelia item, by the way. It's not like super broken on her or anything. It's more like archaic. It's like you really like attack speed on her. That's why she works really well in those Dragon Lord lines. So it's just like, the easy attack speed item, so to speak, right? I should probably check the stats on it just to be safe. Maybe it is good. I'm pretty sure it's bad though. 7 Storyweaver. Irelia. Let's put Irelia 2-star. Items. Yeah, it's plus Delta. I was pretty sure it's bad. I know Runans is really good. A lot of times the best things for Irelia are Runans and Hextech Gunblade, right? And usually like red buff or any sort of Morello. Red buff is like the better version. See here, I'll show the stats real fast. See like that? A little flash of stats. Guinsoo isn't that good, right? It's not like at all an Irelia, insanely good Irelia item. Oh, here I rolled a red buff, so I just put on Irelia. But Irelia is really good at spreading around anti-heal and or shred, right? She already does the shred. Sorry, she does the sundering. So that's really nice. But then you also usually like to have like red buff or Morello on Irelia. Even though it might not show really well in stats, it's just like spreading the anti-heal to the entire team is really useful, right? Obviously, it's not like a giga carry item if you put Morello on Irelia. But also at the same time, what else was I going to make, right? If you look at my components, right? I've been greeting these TGs, so making this Guinsoo is definitely nice to have, especially if you're trying to do like what I'm doing and fast 9ing, right? When I say fast 9, it's like I'm trying to assemble as strong a board as possible, just be able to go to level 9 so that I have a better chance of rolling for upgrading legendary units. But as you can see, I'm doing the Thieves Gloves trick, right? I'm basically just like rolling around the items, right? I'm putting Guinsoo Morello on her now, making sure she's next to Kayle, right? You want to spread out your units a little bit. That's why I have some units spread out, because based on certain matchups, a lot of times clumping them is a bad thing. And I'm just like rearranging things, right? Declaw BT seems like a really good Silas item set, right? Just 2 complete items on Silas that kind of does damage a little bit. And even though I'm 3 bruiser, right, I didn't really roll anything better, right? I really want to have frontline. So, you know, if I hit another frontline unit, like a Nautilus or some like crazy shit, like I'm down to like put in a different frontline unit. I might have missed it on my roll down when I was rolling for Galio and or other units. But I can easily play 7 Storyweaver and then I can level and just play like 4 bruiser if I don't want to change my board at all. There's many different variations, right? The main thing is 7 Storyweaver, and then you can build a board around it. Right, I did a 7 Storyweaver guide not too long ago. This one's more of like a very chill version that I'm showing like a different variation of it. But last week there was another guide. I would recommend if you want to see like different boards, me pull out the board, show different board strengths, show all of that stuff. You can totally just go check out that one on my channel. It's literally like a couple days ago. It should be easy to find, just another 7 Storyweaver game. And that one actually went first in, which is more exciting than this one, which I think I go 3rd in this game. But as you can see, my Zyra has frontline items. I think this is the time that I realized that I should be itemizing Zoe. Oh, I put the wrong item on Zoe. There we go, blue buff on Zoe, spark on Silas, and just like backline items, right? As you can see, very strong early on. It's preserving a lot of HP, right? I'm not necessarily going to go first. This isn't the most high roll game. I do have this Irelia, which is really nice. But, you know, I wouldn't consider this to be like, you know, a guaranteed first kind of game. A lot of times with these Storyweaver games, you'll see that you just fall off really hard towards the end of the game. This guy's just strong as shit. Was he like Fortune or something? Just Kaisa 2, full upgrades. Yeah. I expect to lose some fights because I am greeting a lot, right? I'm not really rolling, right? I don't have many upgrades, right? I have like, you know, a Silas 1 on my board that's holding like a bunch of items, right? I'm 3 bruiser. This is not optimal by any means, but because I'm so high HP, like I'm 60, 70 HP, it doesn't make sense to me to roll so deep with my gold right now, because hitting an Irelia 2 would be a much larger spike, right? Like in this type of setup, having like an Irelia 2 and Duelist and all sorts of like crazy 5 costs, right? I would feel a lot more like, yeah, this is like really strong. But I'm basically just playing this Soraka for Altruist, help out my front line a little bit, and then Silas because he's just bruiser and it's what I hit. I had this Silas since like stage 2, right, that I was playing around. So now I put Deathblade on Irelia, right? This Hodge was a temporary item, so it doesn't really matter to me that much. But yeah, so Irelia items are looking pretty okay, right? Like pretty good. And just whatever, Hodge Galio, because it's a temporary item, right, that I got from Encounter, so I might as well just keep it on somebody. And everybody else's items looks kind of okay, right? Like, we're always looking at these Thieves Clothes items and looking, right? Like, these are okay Zoe items. These are okay frontline items. These are okay frontline items. The Garen items are a little bit awkward. It might have been like a switch these two guys, or maybe take this item and put on Zyra, right? It doesn't have to be a Garen item. But as you can see, this Kayle's just going to carry, right? Every time she does damage, everybody just fucking explodes. I actually rinsed this guy, right? This guy is an example of what, like, you know, he kind of rushed to level 9, but his board doesn't look strong at all, right? That's what I mean by stability, right? I didn't win every fight, but I have a lot of HP, and my board's really stable. So even though, like, I might make it to level 9, or even though I'll make it to level 9 and I'm sacrificing some HP and some like relative board strength right now, you don't want to be in a situation like the guy I just played, where he was level 9 and he's still getting like absolutely steamrolled by me. Like, he lost by like 7 units, right? And I'm full greeting, right? A lot of times, like, you have to really look at your board, and even though you might look at it and say like, I'll survive and make it to 9 in X amount of turns, you still have to have like a good base, right? Like, your board has to be strong enough that you're stable, right? So for example, for me right now, like, that's the reason why I'm going 9, is because I'm very stable right now, right? Like, look at this guy. This guy's greeting to go 9. That makes sense, right? Because look at his board. He has like a full board, all duelists. Maybe he's contested. He wants to find a Wukong. Makes some sense, but I'm pretty sure like he beats me. He might beat me. It depends if my no, I think I beat him because he only has Lee Sin 1, right? That's what I mean, right? Like, this is how sometimes you can go bot 4, but what I'm showing with the STORYWEAVER board is that, like, what did I really get? I have like a Galio upgrade and that's it. And Galio isn't even like that heavily contested of a unit, right? Unless there are how do I phrase it? Like, this game obviously was a little bit high roll because I hit the Galio so early, so I was kind of guaranteed like into like a 7 STORYWEAVER Galio game. Sometimes you're like in Galio jail and you just can't find a single copy of a Galio. But usually that's when there's a lot of Kaisa players, and Kaisa isn't really a comp that a lot of people contest all the time. I know in this lobby there's a Kaisa player, but it's not often that there's like multiple Kaisa players, if that makes sense, right? I think in this lobby there might be more than one Kaisa player. I can't remember because I wasn't paying proper attention to like the names associated with the boards I was playing against. But yeah, I'm rearranging my board a little bit here. I definitely want this Kayle to try and burst down these main damage units as soon as possible. It's a little bit scary. I think this was a misplay just because like I solo frontline the Galio against the main damage this guy has, and as you can see, my whole board just gets rinsed. The idea was good. I just need to put like all my frontline units here because as soon as my Kayle casts, this Kayn probably wouldn't have survived. This Kayn would have died along with the Lee Sin. But because my Galio was solo frontline against all their damage, the Galio just died too soon before the Kayle can get some casts off. So that was my bad, but that was like the idea behind it. But this comp, like, you know, you just have to be very vigilant, I would say, right? It's not like a one shoe fits all. You just play the board and you just win out. You got to be like very like aware. You have to look around. You have to say to yourself, okay, where should my Kayle be to best position against these? You're always trying to get Kayle kind of flatlined, doing like boom, 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 hitting all the units, right? You never want her to be on like an awkward angle such that she's only hitting one unit, right? Because then this guy's gonna live. You want to hit everything at once. You want to be like flat, right? I am kind of cornered, right? I'm a little bit cornered, but it just comes down to like certain things. Here, I just go 9, right? I could delay it a little bit more and be more greedy, but I think that's fine. And just put in a Wukong, just activate Heavenly, right? I still have this Bruiser in, right? I can definitely play like the Wukong Rakan setup. I can play like Dragon Lord. I can even drop this Ultras. It's not the greatest thing, but Ultras works really nicely because I'm always going to be playing Bruisers. This position is a little bit weird. This Galio should be closer to the middle, actually. Galio does a taunt, right? You see this taunt? This taunt is really important to hit like some of the enemy carries to make sure that it draws the aggro. So a lot of times you want to position your Galio more towards the center, but also in such a way that his larger radius hits those enemy units. Here it doesn't really matter because this guy, like I have Irelia 2 now, right? This was the end goal. As you can see, we end up with like pretty good Irelia items, right? I took away the anti-heal off the Irelia because I'd rather just do like more damage. And I'm always pairing towards these two units. There is a Lily and a Morgana player. That's why I'm separating my carries, right? I'm separating them for the reason that like when Morgana casts, you cast against the largest clump. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make it so that if Lily and Morgana cast, they cast somewhere around here, right? Now I just put in Diana, right? Diana is just to give me Sage, right? Right, I have 3 Sage, which just helps my front line, helps my back line. That's what I mean. You're very flexible when you play into these setups, right? Like around Irelia, I still don't even have Duelist in, but I feel like I'm okay. Anyways, this is the Lilia Morgana player. I think I'm on the wrong side relative to this Lilia. He's just way stronger than me, which is a little bit awkward. I think I needed to do the exact same positioning, but just on the other side, right? Like I think I took way too much damage from this Lilia, right? Like I think what I needed is I need these 2 here and these 2 here. Like I need my board mirrored, right? I need my board mirrored, and then I beat that Lilia player, which matters a lot. We're getting to that point where the fights all matter significantly. Like obviously the fights matter all the time throughout the game, but I'm just running into like the situation that what's it called? My board in general, like in order to get like placements now, right? Like it's very apparent, right? Like there's 3 people alive, right? Do I want to get a first or a second, right? Like losing that fight against the Lilia player, I probably could have beat them if I positioned a little bit better, right? So that's like mirror, right? These on this side, these on this side, Galio more towards the center, right? Hand this Galio off to the side is a little bit troll. I should definitely be, I'm just trying to arrange it so that the Kayle is the same as the Galio. But I think I put this position in against the Reapers that one round, which it didn't work out, and then I haven't been repositioning it after, which is a little bit awkward, a little bit bad. Here I just put in the Lee Sin over this because I think instead of Sage and Heavenly, just taking a little bit too much time with these fights. Once again, I'm fighting this Lilia player, but now the Lilia's on the opposite side, so this might actually be a win just because this guy like completely changes positioning for no reason, right? My Galio isn't getting that much aggro. My Kayle's gonna get pumping, right? Irelia's pumping. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I win this fight now. Ooh, it's close. Yeah, I win. This is what I was saying the round right before when I fought this guy, right? When I fought this guy the other time, the biggest problem was that I said my position should be mirrored, and this guy literally mirrored his position for me, even though I didn't scout him. You know, that's pretty funny. Yeah, but he was greeting to go 10. You know, as much as I greeted and stuff, I wasn't winning every single round, right? Because STORYWEAVER just wasn't as strong as that guy. This guy was just so insanely strong. So now I'm in a position where it's like, okay, I can just take a couple bad losses, fight some non-reals, and then I'll go third. I think I end up going third this game, which really means that it came down to like those 1 or 2 fights that I was pointing out that my positioning was bad. Here I position a little bit better, right? My items aren't necessarily the best on every unit with my Thieves gloves, but I think it's okay. Yeah, this Ashe player is going to be really strong. But I am positioned on the right side, and this guy's going for Lilia 3. Oh, he might just hit Lilia 3 and then just wipe me. That's actually pretty sad. Yeah, I think I beat this guy. Oh, so it should be like a second. If this guy's like 1 HP, it should be a second here for sure, right? And I don't think I'd do much better than a second because that guy was just way stronger than me. Which is pretty happy. I'm pretty happy with that. Lee Sin, Galio, these items should be better on a backline unit, right? I think I'm always greeting items on Garen. I honestly think like I should just put these items on a Zyra and I might do a little bit better. I want to be opposite side. I need to position this Galio a little bit better as well. Galio more towards the center would be nice. I think I'm trying to create like this large clump here to draw the Morgana's attention. Oh, this is great. Because I can definitely beat this guy, like this side. You always want to be opposite to this Lilia. Because sometimes the Lilia, when she shoots, yeah, you see how the ball goes close. And then sometimes you just die because she takes the aggro earlier, right? And the Morgana is also like really annoying. Here I just dodged the Morgana, which is great. And Irelia 2 just pumps out enough damage that I can beat this guy. But I think he just has too many lives, right? Like he just has to find 1 Lilia before the game ends, and I think that's how I lose. Because then it doesn't come down to positioning, then it just comes down to like I'm just beat, right? If I beat him one more time, let's see. There was one fight that I should have beat him, so you should be 10 HP lower. If this comes down to like 10 HP in this game, then it's on me, right? If it doesn't come down to like 10 HP, then the chances are that I didn't really have a chance. I'm rolling all my gold because I'm looking for this Lilia. Yeah, I didn't come down to 10 HP. Yeah, I didn't come down to 10 HP at all. Like, there was that one, remember the one fight I was talking about? I've been talking about it for a while now. It's like I should have beat him if I was on the same side. There's no way I beat this guy now. So it's just a second. But this was a very easy second, right? Even commentating it, right? What did I do this game? Like, besides like checking my Thieves gloves with the golden remover, I just kind of made a bunch of Thieves gloves. I picked Storyweaver emblem and I just played vertical Storyweaver. And this is like master level lobbies, right? These are like people that are my skill level. What I'm saying is there's certain comps that are like harder to play and easier to play, right? Obviously this guy, really strong board, really good augments, right? Jeweled Lotus with Lilia board is extremely strong. Was in a position to make it to level 10, right? With trade sector, so he had a bunch of free rerolls. That's probably how, right? Trade sector prismatic saved the rerolls, had a bunch of HP, really strong board early, hit the Lilia and the Morgana without spending too much gold, went straight to 10, Lilia 3, right? That guy has like a very good game, you know what I mean? Like that's like an absurdly strong game, and that's the only person that's able to beat me, like a level 10 Lilia 3 board, right? And it's just because that's the way you can play around the Storyweaver really well, right? You just don't greed your items, play around high HP the whole game, right? And play around this Kayle unit, right? Obviously, if you're playing around, like, you know, if you don't start with like components to make a spark or a shiv, here it's because I think it was like the component galaxy, so I felt like it was very easy for me to make those items, right? I knew that I wouldn't get stuck in jail trying to find a spark or a shiv, right? Because sometimes that happens, especially with Storyweaver, right? When you play Storyweaver and you're strong early, you don't get item picks, so sometimes your items get fucked. But because I knew that I would be able to make like either a spark or a shiv, because it was component galaxy, I was able to pick red Kayle, which I think caps higher. It's really hard to say. In the stats are really weird around green Kayle. It says green Kayle performs better, and I can understand why. My friend who's in Challenger says that he prefers green Kayle just because like you can move it around more easily in the back line, and you never have to worry about positioning it relative to your spark because it will always have shred, right? That part makes sense to me. But for me, whenever I pick green Kayle, I find that like it doesn't cast fast enough, and like that makes sense too. And when you look at the stats, they're very close, and it says green Kayle is a little bit better, but it says that green Kayle is better without a Storyweaver emblem, because like 2 out of the 3 games you're just playing 7 Storyweaver without an emblem, which means that you're hitting Irelia. So if you dig into the stats more, it's like confusing. It's like green Kayle is like a lot of the games that say green Kayle is better were like really high roll games. So like, you know, it's hard to like rationalize it, at least to me. So like I think both are fine. It just depends on like your early game, right? If you don't have a spark, I would suggest like make green Kayle always. If you have a spark or a shiv, then maybe make red Kayle, right? If you think that you might pivot into Kaisa, like if you look like you have like Kaisa items kind of, then make red Kayle, right? But if you're not in those type of spots and like you really need like the shred and the sundering would be really useful for your early game, then I think green Kayle is like really good for your early into mid and really secures you a lot of HP, right? I think both of them work. But anyways, if you want a complete guide, check out the other video on my channel. This one's kind of like a little like late night, quickly put it up so that I keep my daily upload streak, because it was really miserably hot today, and didn't have time to record this earlier, so that's why it's really late. Hopefully tomorrow I can record the guide. I'm waiting for it to get really cold outside like overnight, so that I can like record it, stay up a little bit, record it at night, and then upload it for tomorrow. If not, it'll be sometime this week when the weather's a little bit better. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you for all the support, everybody, and yeah, have fun, and yeah, try out Storyweaver, especially if you're trying to climb. This one should be one of your bag of tricks. You should always be able to like just bang out a Storyweaver game, get a free top 4, you know? See ya.